Hello, my name is Nick, and this is Zumb's travel blog. Today I will be talking about German culture and my experiences and observations of German culture as an American. I lived in Germany for the past 6 months and got to experience a lot of the culture and talk with a lot of my German coworkers and getting to see what makes German different from America and how there's some good, some parts I really like, some parts that I don't love, but that's different. And there's reasons and rationale behind why it's different. One thing that, because in my opinion, a misconception about Germans is that a lot of people think that they're really unfriendly to foreigners. For the most part, I think the main reason is that they don't really like to have small talk with strangers. If you don't have a reason to be talking with someone, they generally don't. And I really didn't fully notice this till I went back to the US and it was like random people in the airport just chit-chatting and like, oh, we're sitting on a bus next to each other and talking to each other. That's not a normal thing in Germany. And I know through my experiences that Germans can be very friendly. Whenever I was like, my coworkers were all very nice to me. I played in a band. They were all very nice to me. And so it's not unfriendliness to foreigners. It's just they don't tend to talk to strangers. Another thing that adds to this stigma that Germans are unfriendly to foreigners is they don't have the same attitude towards customer service as the US does. So it's not expected that people who work at food service or at shops are going to be super nice to you as it can kind of be in the US. And it's not that they're intentionally being unfriendly, but it's just not the culture. It's just not how they tend to do that. And so they're not trying to be mean to you. The big thing that you should know if you ever go to Germany and you're like at a restaurant is that you do need to generally wave down the waiter. They don't check on you. Be aware of that. A counter example to this idea that Germans don't like foreigners is that Germans really take pride in their English skills. This is coming straight from some of my coworkers who've kind of talked to me a little bit about this, but I found with very high frequency Germans were very good at English. Now, it wasn't everyone, and there was plenty of conversations I had in Germany where I couldn't tell you. I mean, maybe they didn't know any English, but in my experience, the people I talked to could speak English very well. One thing that I really love about Germany is that in public transit, buses and trains around the city, they never check. You are required to go out and buy a ticket, but I checked for a ticket a total of once. And I don't know entirely if it's the Germany tend to kind of be trusting and being rule followers, or if it's just a pure efficiency reason. Bus stops go way faster in Germany than in anywhere else. I saw it in Europe or in the US. 'Cause instead of someone getting on, having to pay there and go through all that process, everyone just kind of hops on. Like they go in through every door on the bus and it goes much faster. On a more personal cultural level, I found a lot of Germans were generally very into being in nature, going on hikes, and were generally a lot more active. Like one of my coworkers was really into rollerblading. I had many people who would bike to and from work, and like on the weekends, some people would go skiing in the mountains or go on hikes. And that was a big thing I found culturally, is that people like to be a lot more active than I've experienced in the US. Good for them, helps them, and they're healthy. So a cultural change that is just good. Like that's better for them. Kind of the final bit that really was a big shift for me was that a lot of places in Germany don't take cash, and there's still plenty of people that only pay in cash. And I don't really have the greatest explanation for why. Like pretty much everything, there's a pretty good reason behind it, either historically, their culture, and I couldn't really figure out why cash. And I think there's a couple of reasons. One is that it's a change, and a lot of Germans, especially if you look into like the bureaucracy, changes very slowly. They still use fax machines. But another thing I've read is that Germans tend to be very focused on their data privacy, and using a credit card allows the credit card companies to kind of track you through that. There's also just the fact that it's an extra expense for a business. As a business, you need to buy the hardware and whatever, and you need to pay a fee every time you use it. And there's just a lot of reasons kind of not to, especially when everyone still has cash, and there's lots of people that only pay in cash. So not a whole lot of incentive for quite a lot of businesses. That being said, if you do go to Germany, most places will take card. The only places I really found that only took cash were smaller restaurants and some smaller shops. The grocery stores will always take card. Depending on where you go, a lot of restaurants will take card. Just something you should be aware of. Bring cash with you. Overall, there's a lot of differences in culture between the US and Germany, but there's some things I like. Obviously, some things I don't like, but for everything, there was a purpose and a reason for why their culture was like that. Some of which is obviously just this is what the culture is. And some of these kind of more external differences are the effects of their culture. But everything had a reason, and for them was a good thing, something that was beneficial to them. And so just because something is different doesn't mean that it's inherently negative. It means that for some reason, or some belief or culture, it's better for them. And as someone who is living there who's not really a part of their culture, I definitely needed to kind of adjust to that. But I got to learn and appreciate all the good parts of their differences in culture. And because even in the U.S., there's some parts of it I miss. Obviously, there's a lot of parts I missed of being in the U.S., but overall, through my experience abroad in Germany, I learned a lot about culture and how to adapt to it and really appreciate the differences of culture between even just the other nations and with Europe. And I've learned a lot. This has been Zumb's Travel Blog.